we're going to go slightly off topic of what we discussed. Now, Minds Unleashed is not about improvement, doing better, or steering. Like, if we look at what we've discussed about purpose, pleasure, inner monologues, etc., great topics, great things to talk about. But I think that was the purpose of this channel, Minds Unleashed, is if we go back to those three words, empower, expand, and enlighten minds, right? Fundamentally, we want to discuss things that are outside of that scope that actually bring a lot of value to people, and actually something people can walk away and learn. Oh, I've learned something today. So we're going to learn from Wasif today, cryptocurrency. I think this is going to be a great conversation we're going to have. Just a disclaimer, anything we discuss should not be taken as financial advice. We will not be discussing anything advice related. So please don't consider any information in this as personal advice or any form of advice. All information discussed is factual. Just making that very clear. Wasif, I'm going to be completely honest with you, man. I am super ignorant of crypto. I have invested in coins that... I've invested in coins that have...
Dogecoin.
Pepe. Frog. I don't even like frogs.
Okay.
I hate frogs. But yeah, look, I'm super ignorant to crypto, if I'm going to be completely honest with you. And I think that's about 90% of the population. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that. Look, there's nothing wrong with that. It's about curiosity. It's about learning. It's about getting information from people like yourself that are willing to share that information. So I'm just going to ask you the most basic question before we actually go into what we want to discuss, because I think we want to discuss what is crypto, what is Bitcoin, what is a blockchain. I know we've got the Bitcoin halving coming up soon, what that looks like, what the process of that is. And like, I mean, let's not talk about the implications of what happens, because I think it's quite evident if you look at a chart at a high level, but maybe just touching on some things that can arise from that. So I'm gonna let you talk here and just spin the wheel. Was like, what is cryptocurrency?
What is cryptocurrency? Yeah. So, I mean, let's break down this word, right? Cryptocurrency.
God damn it. Let's break down the word purse.
So we all know like currency, right, is like some form of money. And, you know, there's a lot of forms of money that we have.
Okay.
It can be, you know, it can be in fiat. Before we had like gold and everything. And now we have like digital credits and use your phone and stuff to transact. So it's all become it's transitioning into digitization. And so that's currency. It's a form of exchange or money that you use to transact. And now crypto is basically, it comes from this word cryptic. And so when you think about cryptic, I imagine matrix. Mm-hmm. And so then when you think about the matrix, it's like coded, like coding, or like you just think of, I just think of like the coding lines that go around, like on the screen, the black green background. Yeah, so that's what it is. And I think in the context of cryptocurrency, it's just coded money and referred to as coins. So basically, when you combine two of the words together, it's just coded money that's used to transact, and it's an alternative source of money, you could say.
Interesting. So, okay, I think this might be a topic for a later conversation, but at a very high level, these coins are used to transact, basically. Not all coins, but
yeah,
am I right in saying that?
I'll go over like the coins and stuff. So cool. The first coin that was ever created was Bitcoin.
Yep. And
that was in 2008. And it was by an anonymous person. He goes by the name Satoshi Nakamoto. So you might have seen a lot of memes. People might they thought that they got the right Satoshi Nakamoto, but it wasn't the case.
There's a manhunt for this guy.
Oh, it's not a manhunt. It's just
Right.
like they thought that this guy, he had the same name, so they thought that was him, but it wasn't actually him.
But is there curiosity? Like, is there a lot of curiosity who this guy is, and do you ever see this guy exposing himself? Not exposing himself in that way, but like exposing himself in the sense that yes, I am this guy that created Bitcoin.
Yeah, I think the only way people knew about it was also because of 4chan, like 10 years ago.
Right,
Like,
okay.
I mean, the way to get crypto back then was very dodgy. You had to be on the dark web. You had to use websites you don't even know if you're going to even get Bitcoin in return.
Yeah, I mean, you're paying 5,000 Bitcoins to put a hit on your mother-in-law, like things like that. Not I'm joking. But
No, but like it used very dodgy. Like the process was very dodgy. You don't have exchanges like we have now, where you can use Binance and things like that, and just use your fiat and
SwiftX,
yeah, or SwiftX or
sponsor us. But
coins for any of those, right?
Yeah.
You didn't have those. So back then you'd be like messaging someone, and then you do like OTC, they call it, which is over the counter. So you'd be like, hey, I want to buy this amount of Bitcoin over this address or something, and then you'd have to trust the other person to send you Bitcoin, and you send them your whatever your currency is. That was sort of like the process back then. But that's I think he sort of would comment a message, I think, on 4chan channels or something. So that's, and I don't really see himself ever revealing himself either.
interesting.
Because the whole point of Bitcoin is like decentralization. And I think giving away his identity would compromise that, because other people may probably come after him.
So you've used the word decentralization then, and I've seen this word used a lot. Can you actually explain what that means at a high level?
Yeah. So
Or we can explore it in a different episode, but would you know?
yeah, sure. So, I mean, when you think about the form of money you have at the bank, right? It's quite centralized because it's owned by one entity, and like they control how you spend your money and etc.
Through like interest rates
and things
global
like
fixed
that.
rates and
yeah,
et cetera.
so it's
Yep.
like very centralized in that sense.
Yep.
Whereas decentralization is like there's the responsibility of it is not amongst even people. It's amongst machines, but it's like amongst thousands of machines. And then, I mean, to be able to understand it properly as well, like I'd have to touch on blockchain. So, but like decentralization is like the validation process of like transactions and things are not amongst a single entity. It's distributed. So not one person can say or dictate everything. It's amongst a bunch of thousands of machines that basically do algorithms that or basically the choice and decision is distributed amongst thousands of machines.
Cool.
So that's the most basic way I can explain it.
No, that's pretty good. So we understand what crypto is, coded money. We know what the first coin was, Bitcoin. I think we're going to explore the ideas of other coins and how that all works. I mean, there's different categories of it, so that's all down the track. And we understand that decentralization is distribution of the control, not distribution of control, but centralized is like one entity sort of controlling the aspect of the decisions made around the supply of it.
Correct.
Whereas decentralized is more
Distributing that governance.
Cool.
Yeah.
Okay. That's a pretty good summary so far. Blockchain.
Yes.
Heard it so many times, don't know what it is. I'm pretty sure 99% of people don't know either.
No, it's a very important concept because it's going to probably become more and more popularized later down the lines.
Okay.
Years ahead. So let's break this word down. Block and chain. So when you think of block, I mean, the origin of the term obviously comes from Bitcoin being the first original cryptocurrency that used this concept. So, and it's like mined in blocks. And I'm going to explain everything what mined and everything means. So let's just go with block. So each block that is mined is added onto a chain. So you can think of it as like blocks along a chain, basically. And a block is basically containing a bundle of transactions. So just imagine a Lego block, but it contains like all these transactions that have occurred, basically.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So
And-
transactions within one.
Basically from anyone. so everyone that's transacted and everything, it contains a block. It contains all the transactions like
Okay.
that. And so each of these blocks contain like a unique identifier, like an ID, and that's like through some like hash. They call it cryptographic hash, which is created. And the thing is, like, it's always unique because it's based off like data that is made at that instance of time, especially. And it also contains the hash of the previous block. So all these blocks are like transactions, and that have history that connect to the previous block, previous transactions, and all these things that happen.
So it's like a network.
No, you could say like a somewhat, but not. I would say it's more of like a digital ledger, like the blockchain itself.
Okay. So keep going.
Yeah. So and then the linking of blocks is they use cryptographic hashes, and it basically makes sure that no block can be altered. You cannot like affect any of the previous blocks. So that's what makes it like tamper proof. And a chain is like basically a series of blocks that contain a list of transactions. So when you combine this word together, the way I would really simplify it is a blockchain is just a digital ledger that contains a record of these blocks. These will contain blocks that have a record of transactions which are just linked to each other.
And so these transactions, what are these transactions? Are these transactions like normal trading that you're doing?
It can be basically like me buying, selling, sending
crypto coins.
Yeah, well, in this case, like Bitcoin, for example.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
So it's not the money transactions that we make on every day today, it's more the crypto transactions.
Yeah, well, the transactions that you make on that network. Like if you're on because like each of them are different. Like you have Bitcoin, you have Ethereum, and like etc. So like when you, like for example, when you send money from like SwiftX to like someone else, you would probably realize like when you do the withdrawal that there's like a hash. Like at the bottom, it'll say like a transaction hash. When you click on that, you'll see all these like confusing things that you don't recognize. But that is like part of like, you could say like that is a transaction, and that contains links to like other previous and after transactions that have occurred at that instance time or previous or after that.
Interesting.
So you can see more details of it, but like I would say it's just like, because when you think about a ledger, right? Back in the old days, let me try and make it even just a bit more easier to understand. Like when you think about what a ledger is just a record of transactions. Like back in the old days, I don't know, hundreds of years ago, they didn't have Excel spreadsheets or like any of these sophisticated systems that we have to store transactions, right? They would probably have paper and a pen. It's like, you know, if I paid you $5 to buy apples, they'll probably like record it, like write it on paper or something. I'm not sure. And then now you give me apples in return. And we have that as a record because that's like you could say, between you and I, like a sort of agreement that I gave you $5, you gave me apples. Because if we didn't have that as like proof, then I could come again. I could say I've given you $5, right? But because there's no record of it, and I could say I might have given you $5, but I didn't, and you gave me apples. Then I come again. I say, yeah, you didn't give me the apples, so you give me another apples. So I'm double. Like I'm basically stealing from you, like more apples. Or I could be double spending. We could be saying like, hey, you didn't give me $5 last time. And it's like, oh, okay. And now I'm spending $10 and I'm only getting like one apple. So that creates this problem of double spending and things like that.
Right, okay.
So
interesting.
That's why you have ledgers, right? You have records of these things. Or like if you want to return something that's broken.
Yeah.
But with crypto, it's like, imagine that ledger where you're storing these transactions, but it's just digitally done. And it contains all the other transactions before and after it, basically. Yeah. So that's how I would explain like blockchain in short. It's just, again, digital ledger that contains blocks, which are just records of transactions that are just linked to each other through it, and that's where the chain comes from. So that's all that it is.
Okay. Let's get to the juicy part here.
I was gonna say I
sorry,
didn't
yeah, sorry,
explain
go on.
the mining thing because like that might be very confusing. Like what is
Mining.
exactly mining? Yeah,
Yeah,
because people
sure,
might
sure.
be thinking like, oh, is it like an axe and I'm like physically like breaking these? I'm like, how does this work with tech?
That'd be
No.
pretty cool.
Yeah. But unfortunately, it's not as cool as that. What is mining in the context of crypto is that mining is just like computing hardware that is used to solve problems and challenges. And then they unlock blocks and they verify these transactions. And then because they verify these transactions, because if you think about computing hardware, that would require electricity and a lot of resources. So you need to have some sort of incentive to do that. Otherwise, no one would do it. And the reward they would receive is Bitcoin, basically. And that's why you might hear this term called proof of work, which is basically it's basically a consensus mechanism. So what that means is like it's an agreement. Like all these, because you have all these computers around the world that are like verifying transactions of Bitcoin, right? And they need to have some sort of agreement that these are actually true. These are valid transactions. So that's where like proof of work comes in, where they agree that, okay, this transaction is valid, nothing's been tampered or anything, so this can get added to a block or something. So this way it actually prevents cheating, because you have to have all the nodes, like all the networks or computers to agree that this is a valid transaction. Otherwise, if they didn't have that, then people could just be tampering and just changing, like, cheating, like how I was mentioning before with that example.
But how does that relate to mining then?
Oh, well, it's part of like the mine. It's part of like the mining process. I guess.
The verification of the transactions.
Verification of transactions. So this is what they use as like a agreement algorithm, like a mechanism. Yeah.
So there's more aspects to this, I assume, with mining?
No, that's basically it in short. That's all it is.
Mining means like, so people run all these like supercomputers with like really good like specs, etc., to get like 1 Bitcoin. What does that mean?
Well, it probably might not be 1 Bitcoin anymore. Before it was, because you have halving again.
Interesting.
So I'll talk more about that again.
Okay, before we get to that,
what you were mentioning, yeah.
Let's explain what a Bitcoin is.
Yeah.
And then we'll go into the mining. Like you can probably expand a bit more on the halving and the mining aspect of it.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, sorry.
Yeah, no, sorry, you want to add?
I was going to say, I sort of did somewhat explain Bitcoin because like it's basically like the first original cryptocurrency, and I guess like it has like it introduced like blockchain, which we covered, and then it's like it uses proof of work as like its agreement algorithm amongst computers.
So that's like a very high level.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, it's the most secure and decentralized, and why it's decentralized, as we said, is distributed governance or like distributed computing or agreement.
Yeah,
because it has the most amount of computers like around the world. Or they use the word nodes, which basically means just computing hardware around the world, which is it has the most amount of that, whereas others don't have that. And at the same time, no one knows who Satoshi Nakamoto, like the creator or anyone is. Like it's anonymous. He's anonymous, which I think is actually very powerful. And there's so many other aspects to Bitcoin, which makes it more secure. Like the programming language they use cannot be. It's very limited, and it's been designed that way such that people cannot introduce like malicious codes to create hacks. So the way Bitcoin was designed is why it makes it very decentralized and very secure.
And so
those aspects.
The value of that one, the reason why the value of it goes up and down, and correct me if I'm wrong here in my interpretation of it, is because the value of that one token in what it can do in that system, like that's what dictates the price. Is it more
mainly
the supply?
The market. It's mainly it's limited. Well, if you think about Bitcoin, well, let's give a more real world example which people can relate on, which is gold.
Okay.
Like gold is limited in supply, and I mean that's like the main. And gold can be used for a lot of things, but the main thing is that it's scarce. That's where its value comes from, right?
Yep.
So, whereas if you have fiat and other types of currencies, you can print them unlimited amounts. There's no limits to it. So that's where like this value concept comes to it, like Bitcoin isn't pegged to anything. Like it's not pegged to the gold, USD, anything.
Right.
So it's like based on how the market values it, and because there's more interest that's growing, and like also the halving, right, which is a programmed event in Bitcoin where it halves the rewards. So you know how we're talking about the miners who get rewarded for like solving all these complex problems and creating blocks and verifying transactions and things like that when you send or buy and all these things. The halving basically halves the reward each 4 years. So, and they introduce like the new supply of Bitcoin as well. And we're almost at the peak because like we're at, I think, 19 something million. And
What's the peak?
the Bitcoin's capped at 21 million.
Right.
So there isn't really much left, to be honest, if you think about
To
it.
mine.
Not
To mine or to supply?
to mine, I guess, or like to
Interesting.
supply.
Okay.
So there's, I mean, but it's very slow, like the rate. I can't remember what the rate is right now. I think it's 3.125 Bitcoins or something. Before, I think 2009, I think it was like 50 Bitcoin.
50.
You would get you'll be able to mine.
Wow.
So, but then back then the price of Bitcoin was very low.
So with this, so you mentioned mining every 4 years. Is there an aspect where mining ever stops? Oh, sorry, the halving ever stops. Sorry. Is it when it goes to zero, like a zero reward? Because it would just go into like 0.0, 0.0, 0.0.
Yeah, it does become, and I think at that point you see like, stability as well, because the supply as well is like very, I mean, it's going to be a lot less volatile because there's a lot less supply being introduced. And by that time, because I'm not sure how long it really goes for, where it's like extremely diminishing returns, but there's going to be a lot of regulation and a lot of other institutions that come on board, and it'll probably like stabilize a lot more. But that's very far away, to be honest. And the thing is, right, because if you think about it, the halving, for me to be able to mine equivalent 50 Bitcoins back then, I would need like 20 times more computing power
Than what we have now.
like to be able to mine the equivalent amounts to 10 years ago.
Oh.
Because I was able to get 50 Bitcoin now. I'm getting 3.125 or something.
So to get that,
So
you'd
to
have
get
to
that
be-
amount, I need 20 times more computing power. And then you have to keep in mind, there's other people you're competing with who also have high. That's why you see a lot of Bitcoin farms and things. Like for me to mine now, like me, just myself with a pretty good build PC, I'm not going to be mining anything right now because it's so expensive to be able to mine Bitcoin, especially because of the competition.
What's the average cost to it? You think tens of millions?
It would be
Hundreds of thousands?
yeah, hundreds of thousands, I think.
Wow.
And you'd need like, I mean, if you mining farm, you think about that.
Yeah.
And that's why the cost of like GPUs, I think we had a moment like 3 or 4, 5 years ago where the GPUs like NVIDIA and graphics card inflated.
Because of that?
Yeah, because of
Wow.
mining and things like that. But so
Thanks
that's,
for ruining farms.
but so that's the thing. And I think when you think about it as well, because like initially when you looked at Bitcoin, it was extremely volatile and it didn't have the rate of supply was very high, like it being introduced back 10 years ago. Now it's slowing down a lot. So that's why, I mean, and obviously the total capitalization of Bitcoin, as in the total amount of money in Bitcoin, is a lot more higher now because there's more people interested. It's been marketed a lot. It's now very accessible. Whereas back then, remember how I said you had to go down the dodgy way to be able to get Bitcoin? It wasn't as accessible. That's why it was extremely volatile back then. You'd see like it go to crazy prices, like as in you'd have like 90% days where it drop and like rise. Whereas obviously you don't see that now. It's like probably like 5-10% volatility or something like that. It's a lot less volatile back then because of the supply and total
interesting.
capitalization. But yeah, without going too complex, that's like the halving basically that everyone talks about and what it is and what it's about. So it's really just, in short, it's just it's halving the reward that miners would receive every 4 years, and this and it's introducing new supply of Bitcoin. But it's the supply of Bitcoin that's being introduced now is like very slow rate because of 3.125 Bitcoin versus being 50 10 years ago. So, but keep in mind that because there's only 21 million Bitcoin, that's why it's very scarce, and that's why you could say it's valued. Because when you think about gold, because I want to go back to your question. When you think about gold, it's scarce, but it's very hard for me to store this. Because if I want to have hundreds and thousands or millions of dollars of gold, I need to have a vault. I need to I need to store this in a vault and things like that. People can be very insecure about that. Vaults and stuff can get. I mean, it's very difficult to do that, but they can get stolen.
Yeah, it's a risk of robbery. Yeah,
it's a risk of robbery, and it's just it's not liquid as well. Like I can't immediately sell this. Like I need to go through a process to be able to sell physical gold. Maybe there's probably like digital gold and things like that. It's obviously, I think gold, it's good to obviously, it's a good source of like security, but the thing about Bitcoin is that you don't have to worry about, storage and things like that because it's digital. You can get like hardware wallets and things like that to store it and secure it. And, it's your responsibility though. That's one thing. You have to be able to remember your passphrase, because if you lose that, no one's going to be helping you. You cannot recover it. That's how it's been designed. So it's scarce, and I think and it's very liquid. I can sell it at any moment. Don't have to go through a process. Sell it on exchange. I can sell it on anywhere else. So if I needed money immediately, whereas emergency case, I don't have to go through like this entire process. I can just immediately sell at that moment.
So it's the fact that it's an accessibility of.
It's accessible, and it's just decentralized, scarce, and I think that's why people value it, right? And no one has control over the supply. You cannot increase the supply, and that's why ultimately it's valued.
We'll touch on the use cases, not the use cases, but I think you've touched on a lot of the good parts of it. So you've touched on the effects of it, the current block reward, what is halving, Bitcoin halving, what's blockchain. I think you've provided a very high level summary of that. I think we'll explore more on the use cases, the limitations of it, how it's used, what are the limitations, because I feel like it's something that's going to get spoken about a lot, and I think people just need to have an understanding of what it is. If you obviously not financial advice, but understanding what you're buying before you start buying. You're not going to buy things that you don't know, which is very consumer-driven market.
So you always do your own research, as they always say.
Do your own research. Again, making it clear, anything we did discuss was not advice in any capacity. So please take it as some information you can use to spark that curiosity, and you can go on and do your own research. Cool. Thanks, Wasif.
All said.
Like this video, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and we'll look forward to bringing you guys more great content. Thank you.
Thanks, Shiv. Thanks, everyone. See you on the next one.